she's staring at.
Released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and various other home video game and handheld formats of the time by High-Tech Expressions and developed by Designer Software, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge tells the story of either Mickey or Minnie Mouse, your choice, falling asleep while reading a book. Before they know it, they find themselves dropped onto a magical castle setting that has been threatened by constant earthquakes. Thus, it's up to you to help Mickey and Minnie find out who or what is responsible for the evil tremors before nothing of note happens. Spoiler alert, it's a sleeping giant who snores constantly. Sorry if I ruined the movie for anybody. Yeah, so we did the Genesis version of this thing years ago, and somebody wanted me to review the SNES version of this thing for whatever reason, even though they're all technically the same game. And in regards to the 16-bit, there's no real differences between the two other than technical aspects. But here we are, and sure. So, upon starting a new game, you could choose to play as either Mickey or Minnie, no real difference between the two beyond different dialogue. You could also choose your level of difficulty, which alters aspects of the game, but otherwise nothing too drastic. So at first glance, it looks like a side-scrolling platformer, which Mickey has a number of such titles under his belt. But the Ultimate Challenge is more of a compilation of mini-games. Mickey, or Minnie, has to complete 5 such games at the castle in order to access the 6th and final game, which is, spoiler alert, a sliding tile puzzle. The eternal bane of all puzzle games. And as much as I loathe Pipe Dream, I would rather sit through 10 sessions of Pipe Dream than put up with another one of these miserable piles of... Anyway, as for the other 5 games, let's look at each one, shall we? The librarian needs his books reassembled a certain way, and you have to hop on the correct books to solve the dilemma. Depending on the difficulty setting, you'll either have to spell out a word with the proper letters, or collect the letters in the proper alphabetical order. This is the closest thing to challenging platforming you will find in Mickey's Ultimate Challenge, as one fall into the bottomless pit will cause you to restart the whole process from scratch. Fortunately, that's the worst fate you could suffer in a game like this, as there are no lives or continues or risk for that matter. You just try, and try again until you eventually succeed at something and find that there's no reward either. This next game sees Donald Duck as a sorcerer apprentice accidentally shrink you down to size with one of his spells. He can turn you back, but he needs the appropriate potions to put together the proper growth spell. So you have to move around this board and push all the potion flasks into this mirror thing. This is basically a variation of that Sokoban game where you push boxes into the designated areas, except much simpler in this case because it's pushing potions into a single mirror, and that's about it really. The higher the difficulty, the more boards you have to play, but even then it's more drawn out than actually challenging. This shouldn't take you too long to complete. In our next game, Huey, Dewey, and Louie can't bring the drawbridge down because the pipes are clogged or something, so you have to press these 4 buttons in the proper sequence in order to unclog the pipes. This is basically the Disney equivalent of Simon, the thing with the glowing buttons that you have to press in sequence, and higher the difficulty, the more rounds you have to play, and it's still Simon, and whatever, you know, it's a sequence, you follow the sequence, whatever, blah, 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 it works. Boing-do! Next game, Daisy is distressed because all the portraits are covered in dust, so you have to clean them off before the torchlight runs out. This is your basic matching game where you have to find 2 portraits of a kind, and you pretty much repeat the process until all the pictures are revealed before time runs out. Difficulty determines the length of the playfield and thus the number of portraits on the board, and because there's only a few unique mugshots, there are plenty of repeating portraits that you could pair up, which makes life somewhat easier, especially on the longer boards. Not much else to say here, it's pretty self-explanatory. Finally, our 5th and final castle-bound game. Goofy has a bunch of tools in his toolbox, and you have to guess what's inside. This is essentially that codebreaker game where you have to guess the correct code, and you're given hints as to how accurate you are. The easier settings will actually highlight which parts of the code are correct, if any, while higher settings will only give you vague hints. Again, there's not much to this one, it's a lot of guesswork. Solve 3 such codes, and you win the game. Well, this game at least, not the whole thing. Now I joke about risk-free, reward-free. Completing these minigames actually do net you key items that you'll later have to give to specific characters in exchange for magic beans that you'll toss into the magic well to grow the magic beanstalk that will let you attempt to wake the magic sleeping giant by completing his magic sliding puzzle gimmick. And yeah, let's be fair here. Mickey's Ultimate Challenge is a title that promises more than it delivers, which is a meandering collection of minigames that is aimed more towards the younger folks. Playing on the hardest skill might invoke some semblance of challenge, but it's more a matter of patience and staying awake than anything if your age ranges somewhere within the double digits. And the games themselves are fairly simplistic, usually straightforward. You're given clear instructions on how each game is played, and roaming around the castle for a lark is a nice bit of a diversion that serves no real purpose, but hey, it's a break from the puzzling tedium, so that's gotta count for something. Mickey's Ultimate Challenge looks fairly decent, almost looking like a Disney cartoon thing come to life. The Super Nintendo version comes across a little cleaner looking compared to the Genesis version, but not by much I feel. All the characters are easily recognizable, the settings are somewhat vibrant and colorful. This visual of Donald looking through the glass table is still unsettling and still needs to burn. The sleeping giant looks somewhat friendly, and as for Minnie and Mickey, they're well drawn and animate well enough with unique postures and things of that nature. Can't fault the visuals here, they're nice looking and fit the overall aesthetics quite nicely. Sound, on the other hand, is generally weak sauce. Very few sound effects and they're all stock sounding, unimaginative stuff. The music also comes across as fairly bland and forgettable, and this is one of the few cases where the differences between the SNES and Genesis versions in terms of sound quality are relatively minor. They may sound different due to different sound processing, but they're both equally bad, and it really doesn't make much of a difference in the long run. Overall, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge, well, it doesn't quite live up to its name, now does it? It's a game aimed at younger kids and not so much the older kids who would probably blow through this in no time flat, so long as they're not falling asleep, or at least until they give up on the sliding puzzle, in which case I wouldn't blame them either way. The best you could say about this one is that the minigames are at least competently executed, and they work about as well as you'd expect them to, but that's about it really. If you want a challenging Disney game, you won't find it here, but if you want the cure for insomnia, well, there's plenty of other ways that get the job done easier and much more efficiently. Even your younglings deserve better than this, so give them something much more suitable for the developing mind. You know, like Contra. That's a kid's game, right? I played it as a kid, I turned out fine. Though I was more of a Super C guy, but whatever. Anyways, bye.